Hi everyone and welcome. Well, this recording is a little bit special because I would like to present and share my own astrological research, and one of my most favorite topics ever since I practice astrology has always been the influence of the trans-Neptunian objects and their role in astrology. Now, most of the trans-Neptunian objects, dwarf planets, just like Pluto, have been only a recent addition to astrology. Most of them have been discovered, in astronomy, in physical reality, in the early 2000s. For example, 2005 was a very, very important year. So even us astrologers have to basically research them, their influence on us collectively, but also individually, because as we know, every single celestial object is actually a psychological inner force within us. If everything in the universe is creation, creation first of all is thought, the blueprint, the schematics, just like the internet, for example, and technology, where the information is just a combination of electrons, electrical impulses, which do need a storage space, something material, something concrete, something real for that information to be written on. So similarly, the planets are just the hard drive. They are just the physical containment of the information. For example, the resonance of rocks and everything that has to do with the components of chemical elements, especially on a subatomic level. Those contain the information and the specifics. Yet it is actually their symbolism and their psychological influence, and of course how they exist in our consciousness that matter the most, especially in astrology. Now, of course, I have never ever dared to publish my own work and my own research, but this is where times are changing for everyone. And as we know, the nodes of the moon changed signs just yesterday, the 18th of January 2022, and the North Node in Taurus, especially with Uranus in it, and at one point it will square Saturn. Well, that is not the best of news and the most fortunate energy for very, very small businesses, and especially businesses, if I can consider what I do a business, that are based on charity free, so it's free for everyone and it's donation based. To be totally honest, of course, this celestial conversation where Saturn squares the North Node will erase me, because YouTube, once it was under the domain of Uranus. It was revolutionary. It was a great substitute or alternative for television, mainstream media, but as time changed so very quickly and it has evolved, it already falls under the domain of Saturn, because it is already ruled by customs, traditions, and it has an economy of its own, so to speak. So of course Uranus will erase me and many other small channels like myself, except the other symbolism of Saturn. Someone highly, highly influential and powerful takes me under their wing, which is, of course, very, very unlikely. So basically, this is what I would like to leave behind in case. So basically, the theme and subject of my research is the influence of the trans-Neptunian objects, of course the most relevant ones and the bigger ones, on us personally. And because most of these trans-Neptunian objects are even further away from the Sun than Pluto, their power is that much stronger, but they are very, very new. Our collective consciousness of humanity, including astrologers as well, is just getting to know these very important but at the same time highly mysterious energies. So their influence is definitely not like the personal planets, not even like the outer planets, And not even as Pluto, they are much more hidden, they're much more mysterious, and they also very, very much depend on what we do with them personally. Of course, collectively, it's not the case, because every one of these trans-Neptunian objects serves a very, very strong karmic purpose, that which kind of transcends already the current level of our spiritual, psychological, and even philosophical understanding of our own species and our own collective psychology. But of course, when we look at them individually, everything changes, because we have power. And these planetoids give us certain powers if we understand their symbolism and, of course, how to use them. This research of mine might be more relevant to those who are into manifestation and magic, especially astrological magic, because chances are everyone will know where these planetoids are in their own personal chart in the now. These planetoids, according to my own personal research and experience, work in the now, in the eternal now. And they greatly empower one area of our lives, and they can truly help us to transform ourselves from within. They activate certain parts of us, our deepest instinctual selves, a certain genetic information that we have been carrying in our genes, that ultimately, if expressed, it upgrades our consciousness, and that is always a very, very big game changer. Anyone who is into any kind of spiritual practice, a healer, psychology, astrology, even tarot, anything of this nature, might benefit from knowing exactly where these planetoids are in their chart and what they're doing. Now, to start this presentation, of course, the most relevant and the most famous, the most iconic trans-Neptunian object is, without a shadow of a doubt, Pluto. But I will not mention Pluto in my research, because Pluto has so many astrological research, astrological analysis, astrological research, a whole library about Pluto. So chances are, if it comes to Pluto, there is so much and diverse information out there. But, even Pluto itself was included in the 1930s, so we are still learning it. We are still analyzing it. We're still being witness to how Pluto expresses its symbolism. And out of all the planets in astrology, naturally Pluto is one of the most powerful and also one of the most fated energies, because what it touches collectively and individually, it will never ever be the same again. And also, Pluto is a system. It is composed of Pluto himself and Charon, Pluto's largest moon. And Charon is so very symbolic, because it simply carries us to the other side. It helps us cross the Styx, our personal Styx, the river which separates the living from the dead. But we need alchemical gold, we need our soul values to pay Charon for our safe passage. Now, from an astronomical perspective, Pluto is the biggest trans-Neptunian object, but almost all of the objects that I'm going to be mentioning in this recording are only slightly smaller than Pluto. Some of them actually have greater mass than Pluto. Some of them are systems just like Pluto. And also they are further away from the Sun than Pluto himself. So that means the mystery. That means the enigma. That is another frontier in our collective evolution. Now, of course, another planetoid which I'm not going to include is Ceres. She is quite large, but she is between Mars and Jupiter, so basically her symbolism and influence is part of our everyday lives. And of course, there is so much research about Ceres. She is one of the dwarf planets which has been with us for a lot of years. She was discovered on the 1st of January 1801. Now, to begin, the second largest trans-Neptunian object is the planetoid Aries. Now, I have been speaking a great deal about her and her symbolism in many of my horoscopes in 2020, 2021, and of course 2022, because she holds a long-term and very important conversation with Pluto a square and its cardinal energy. Pluto is in Capricorn, Aries is in the sign of Aries. Now, Aries is definitely one of the most powerful planets out there, because it takes her 559 years to orbit the Sun. So that means all of us alive today have this planetoid Aries in the sign of Aries, and we're definitely going to have her here for a long time. And in this part of the sky, she is extremely powerful because the sign of Aries, well, on one hand, it is the first breath. It is the creation. It is basically the most primal self. Also at the same time, it is Mars's home sign. And Aries in mythology, Discordia, is the sister of Mars. And her symbolism, from very many points of view, is similar to Mars, just that she is female. She is the female warrior, the female fighter, the female rebel, the female revolutionary. She has also very Uranian qualities, because everything that she touches, she sends into chaos, almost like reconfigures. And out of that chaos, something new, and most of the time something much, much better, is being born. And this is exactly why it is the divine feminine expression of chaos, because she gives birth to something totally new. Of course, her ways sometimes are pretty violent, pretty unusual, pretty chaotic, enigmatic, and something that is very specific to her is that she loves when she's against the odds. When she transforms, when she changes, when she revolutionizes something, she does it in the most unusual way possible, because what she wants to prove to us as persons or as a species is that there is no impossible. Anything is possible as long as we truly want it. And also, hierarchy is never, ever, ever set in stone. And for this, please allow me to use a very unusual example, because as you know, I love the power of the example. Well, let's take the elephant, for example, one of the largest mammals, and it doesn't have that very many natural predators. It is the symbol of the stability of hierarchy. In nature, it is definitely one of the most successful mammals due to its size, strength, and sheer intelligence. Now, the king of the jungle, lion, or call any predator you'd like, might really not have that many chances against elephants. Not only because one elephant is more than enough to defend themselves, but elephants usually travel in groups, so it's not very easy to bring down an elephant. And to bring down the elephant may be the Martian example. To fight physical confrontation, one strength against the other strength. Now, if Aries would want to bring down an elephant, what happens if by a chance, by an impossible chance, when it is against the odds, an elephant to be mysteriously one way or another stung by a highly toxic insect? A very small spider, for example, or something that has venom to kill 10 elephants. Well, that's how Aries, that is her modus operandi. The impossible happens. Everything out there in the universe has a natural counterpart. Nothing in the world is totally stable and nothing is invulnerable. Chaos can find, one way or another, a solution to send even the most stable system into total chaos, and out of that chaos, something new is born or is created, or at least that chaos has a meaning, it has a purpose, it does something. Now, from a collective perspective, Aries is the freedom fighter. She is the protester in any way, shape, or form, physically, on the street, fighting against police and centralized power, or legally, she is the rebel lawyer, etc., etc. Now, personally, what we can do with this Aries, and she is right now at 23 degrees of Aries, so where does that fall into your chart? What she's doing is to overcome your limitations, but through very unusual means. Perhaps a massive leap of faith that would usually ruin you, let's say. And this is also the symbolism of her square with Pluto. Pluto is the external force. Government, society, our family, whatever gives a permanence, whatever gives a very strong and impassable structure to our lives, it can also represent an inner structure, our own psychological setup, our own limitations, or everything that we might lack that might keep us under control. And from these two planets, it is actually Aries who is the stronger power player. So she kind of inclines us right now to have this massive moment of courage, infinite, ultimate self-belief. And it is that self-belief that can alter our reality, send it into total chaos. So for many people out there, personally, individually speaking, in the last couple of years, 2019, 2020, 2021, the Aries-Pluto square stripped their lives from everything. They lost their job, their career, their family, their physical home, all of their material possession, all of their inner values and possessions, including that. For example, someone was always, all their lives, a really, really good manager, and of course they pursued career in management, any way, shape, or form. Aries might have shut that down and turned that person into a singer, an artist, but in such a way where that person never ever in their lives had artistic talents at all. It wasn't that they weren't aware of it, they didn't actually have it in them, and Aries somehow changed that, so we could see a lot of people out there who transformed their lives 180 degrees with an act of maximum courage, even insanity, and it destroyed their norm. And the legend of Aries is very, very important in this sense. She was the one who threw the golden apple, and the goddesses started fighting with each other. They included their husbands, relatives, and families. She sent Olympus, so the integrity of the pantheon, into total chaos by one single gesture, which wasn't even violent. It was the ultimate truth, a truth which is beyond even the realms of Pluto. a truth that might simply evoke a divine pattern, the principle of beauty. Who is more beautiful? And beauty can simply not be judged. Maybe the principle of beauty, and beauty, what is beautiful and what is more beautiful, cannot be judged even by the creator, because it is always subjective. There is no objectivity ever in that. So it was that paradox, that dichotomy, which was the golden apple of pure chaos, and the dichotomy destabilized even the divine order. In a very philosophical way to express it, Aries can make the creator itself contradict itself, and a new state is born out of that. So, personally speaking, with this Aries is our most primal self. Aries is the breath of creation within us. What inner conflict did you have recently? And how did that inner conflict and the torturous way of that inner conflict changed your life, your personality, and your very understanding of yourself? How did it liberate you? How did it free you? And it is that freedom that you achieved that ultimately gives you the power to go against all odds. And again, the power of the symbolism. Let's say there is an artist who has doctor degree PhD in arts and, infinite talent. The symbolism of Pluto and Capricorn. Maximum power, of course, due to work, sacrifice, investment, etc., etc. And there is that homeless person who doesn't know yet that homeless person can paint or do the same thing as the PhD person in physical reality. Give a canvas and paintbrush to the homeless person and the artist, and they start working, they start creating. And with this power of Aries, with the golden apple of chaos, that homeless person, if the odds, if the power of hazard makes it so, and someone sees a creation of his, can overnight overcome the status, the power, the fame of the great artist. This is what Aries wants to do for us personally. In which way do you need to overcome your limitations, your conditioning, even that which simply physical reality makes you impossible to become? What is your impossible dream, yet still that which has been with you all your life? That is Aries within you, the ultimate rebel, because you are fighting against all odds and all chances. That is why whatever that dream or that will is will not die from your soul, because Aries keeps it alive. That is your own personal golden apple, which at one moment in your life you will throw, and your whole understanding of yourself, not to mention your reality, will naturally change. Now let's get to the next planetoid, which is named Haumea. Haumea's name comes from the Hawaiian goddess of fertility, and she is notorious to regenerate and renew, heal profoundly everything that she touches. Now, naturally, Haumea is beyond the orbit of Neptune and Pluto, and it takes her 284 years to orbit the Sun, and Haumea is one of the most unusual dwarf planets because she spins so very quickly, rapidly around her axis that she has an X shape. So this is where the universe is telling us in a very direct and physical way that she is the egg. She is that which contains life, that which contains infinite source of creation, but that is within the shell. It is from within that we must discover it. And Haumea's symbolism reminds me of a principle of Carl Jung, where he's considered, of course, that the same expression of parts of us which Freud, his mentor and his teacher, considered to be only the libido, it is actually our divine nature, the inner creativity, the power of the soul, that which makes us stand apart from animals and even the kingdom of nature, because we are a little bit godlike, exactly because of our inner creativity, if we manage to transcend it. So, of course, for some people, it is just the libido. They just want to reproduce. They are basically motivated, possessed by their Plutonian expression, sexuality, their urges, that which is in their genes, they're programmed to do ever since first breath. Yet for other people, those who transcend this, artists for example, this becomes the divine expression, even if it's illusion, but everything in the human world and the universe itself, it is merely just an illusion. The universe is an illusion. The divine itself is an illusion. The mind and our consciousness is an illusion, but an illusion which never ever dies. It never ceases to exist. It is eternal, yet the form it takes and the way it expresses itself, that is permanently changing and flowing, basically our own inner alchemy. Haumea is right now at 29 degrees of Libra. Libra is partnership, Libra is equilibrium, Libra is the opposite sign of Aries, so of course she opposes Aries. But that opposition, well, it is so very symbolic. As I said, Aries wants to throw in the apple and send us into chaos, and within that chaos we meet Haumea and renew ourselves. We breathe again. And of course, the symbolism of Libra once again. Without a significant other, romantically or in any way, shape and form, friend, co-worker, contract, the other, are we truly significant at all? Yet, of course, many of us, especially in this age of deep loneliness, find ourselves totally alone. Yet if we look in the shell, the egg, what is inside, we find the divine. We find our true self, which is infinite, which can create everything it desires. It is the most powerful expression of the divine feminine within us, that which is gentle, but the shell has to protect it. It will never, ever, ever present itself to us just like that on a silver tray. We need to dig very, very deeply inside to find the source of life, to find the embryo within the egg yolk. And also within the egg we have infinite nurture. We will not die, we will not suffocate, yet there will come a moment, Aries, of course, where the egg cracks and we need to embrace a new existence, a new life, rebirth. Of course, Haumea squares Pluto as well. The symbolism of Pluto, the transformation. A chick that hatches from the egg can never ever go back inside the egg. So once the egg cracks, there it is, we need to embrace life and existence in a different form. Haumea is also very quantum energy, so everyone who is studying manifestation techniques, Haumea can be very, very helpful. Synchronicity, in the sign of Libra, synchronicity. But synchronicity coming from the words of other people. What I am doing right now, speaking to your soul, delivering words, information, Mercury, I'm a Gemini, into your mind, while I'm awakening your inner Haumea, your inner creativity. Because you are listening to my work, because you are here on my channel, well, I am Haumea in the sign of Libra for you, because I am the other. Also, Haumea is at 29 degrees, which in astrology is the anaretic position. Any planet, and even Haumea planetoid, that is at this degree has its symbolism greatly amplified. So right now, many of us, a lot of people are birthing something. We feel the pain of birth, of giving birth and being born at the same time. We are both inside the egg, what is inside, but also that which is outside. The symbolism of Libra, the duality, the scales. And also the birth itself, we are shedding everything off. We are baptizing ourselves anew. We are returning to a state of innocence, and that is infinitely painful. Yet Haumea is also frequency. We need to keep the vision and especially the feeling, the love. A Libra is ruled by Venus, goddess of love and beauty. As long as we hold the frequency, the birth, whatever we are birthing, whatever we are creating, whatever it is that we're manifesting, well, it exists already in the future. May we lose the frequency, or may we turn the frequency into something negative. For example, our self-talk where we say, I know that it's not gonna be okay. I know that I'm gonna be defeated. We drown in the egg, we will never be born. So right now, in the now, it is so important to keep the dream alive, to keep the joy, the love, the infinite excitedness of the moment, which is certain in the future when we embrace that which we create, when we hold the newborn child for the first time. And of course, this is the good side. The negative side, an erratic degree, of course, we may feel suffocated. There's not enough oxygen in the egg, in the shell, because we are nearing the time of birth, the time when the egg cracks. So right now we may feel extreme discomfort and frustration of such level that we have never ever experienced before in our lives. But it is the discomfort, it is the suffocation which determines the chick to start cracking the egg from the inside. So, again, the symbolism of Haumea in our lives. Now moving on, another planetoid dwarf planet which is also in the sign of Libra is named Makimeki, and he can be considered a certain kind of male version, if that is acceptable, of Haumea, because he has a lot to do with fertility. He is also an indigenous god. His symbolism has a lot to do with the seed of creation, its masculine expression especially, where the act of creation, well, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be intense, the allure, the magic of creativity, the process of creating it. Makimeki takes 306 years to orbit around the sun. He is at approximately 8 degrees of the sign of Libra. So again, we enter the Venusian realm. And it is no coincidence that both Haumea and Makimeki are in this Venusian realm, especially because this is Libra. Libra is the daytime expression of Venus, when she is considered, especially by Socrates, the divine, the celestial Aphrodite, where in Taurus she is the earthly one. And that means the mind, the beauty of the mind, beauty of words, beauty of diplomacy, beauty of communication, the beauty that we see in another person, the beauty that is in the eyes of the beholder. When we see beauty in another person, regardless if physically their words, their artistic expression, their creativity, or we just basically walk on the street and a person, a total stranger, catches our eye and we admire the beauty that the Creator put in that person. We bow before the great artist that is the Creator, that is Makimeki basically. Beauty can never ever ever exist. It is basically absurd without the eye of the beholder. So for us to feel beautiful, there needs to be a beholder. Whenever, let's say, the sheer gesture of complimenting a person for whatever, of course honestly, this is not the niceness and honey that we just sprinkle onto our words to get what we want or to impress another. This is the honest compliment. This is when it comes from the very core of our hearts. The Venusian expression of the divine masculine, that he who courts, he who showers with compliments, he who is so in love with the principle of beauty that every gesture of his is a reflection of that beauty, of that love, of the passion, but in the most honest sense possible. For example, the male songbird who serenades the female. The male jumping spider who dances for his life. That is Makimeki. And whenever we compliment the other, we compliment the Creator, we compliment ourselves, and ultimately where does this lead us? The Creator will compliment us. So what can Makimeki do for us personally? Well, it has so much to do with beauty and the divine masculine expression of appreciating beauty. You like a song, compliment the artist. Not internally, because that is feminine. Externally, use the divine masculine within you. Say it. Libra communication. Or by the song supporting the artist. Someone has done a good job. A creative person, you bought something from a creator of any kind and you enjoy it. You find it beautiful. It adds value to your life. Compliment the person. Say it. Express it. Show it. Compliment the divine in everything. You walk on the street, you see a beautiful rose bush, say it. It is so beautiful. It has meaning. The universe, Mother Nature, is the greatest artist. She creates perfection within imperfection. And however you express your admiration, appreciation, the compliment, well, it returns to you, because that is the nature of Libra. The duality, the scales of justice, that which you project onto another, well, one way or another will be projected onto you. Whenever you compliment, and again I must say, this is the honest compliment, it will return to you, and that is one of the fundamental rules of quantum physics. It always returns. You want something in life, and this is from an esoteric perspective, not necessarily in a very applicable form in physical reality. You want something, you desire Venus, compliment it, send it love, send it, as if you were a male, deeply in love with a beautiful girl, or let's not put gender on it. You are in love with a person, and that love possesses you and you cannot help yourself with compliment. So compliment it, whatever it is to you, whatever you wish to acquire, accomplish, however that appears in your mind, in your soul, the idea, the feeling, the principle, compliment it. And you make it become real for you because the compliment has to return to you. Now moving on, we have another expression of the divine masculine, and this planetoid is called Quaoar. This is also an indigenous god, but one which has a very special twist to him. His orbit is 288.8 years. Of course, he is beyond Pluto, and he is at 6 degrees of the sign of Capricorn. Now, what in mythology, of course, what is specific to Quaoar is that he created through dance, through music, through sheer joy, through sheer lightheartedness. Quaoar is the expression of the inner child and the power that children have to create and manifest. The sheer joy, the laughter, the well-being of a child is infectious. It is one of the most powerful forces that moves our species. The happiness of a child basically possesses anyone, especially the parent. Let's say that there is a person who is really a bad human being, in any way a criminal, psychopath or whatever, but chances are, of course, sadly, and I'm so sorry to say, it is not general, there are sadly exceptions, but everyone sees their child as perfection and loves their child no matter what. Even a person who has a wicked heart, well, chances are their heart will only beat for their child. And again, sadly, there are exceptions, but not as much. So basically, children have a great power over their parents and also many other adults, because the adults of the species instinctually, by the very core of their inner animal included, see the child as the future, and the child has to survive. And this isn't rational, this is instinctual. And the sheer joy, pleasure, the love of the child, when the child laughs, the lightheartedness, the miracle in every gesture that the child does, well, it is the source of happiness hormone for everyone. But if we add to this the inner child within a mature and experienced person, the symbolism of the Capricorn, when we are full of life experience, when we are our own parents, the parents of that inner child within us, so we have not just the infinite power of the inner child, but also the mastery, the life experience, and all the pain that is hand in hand with that. And if we express it through sheer joy, through the bliss, through the magic of being alive, through this instinctual artistic expression, because singing and dancing is available to anyone. Everyone can sing and dance. Of course, the appreciation of that is a different thing, but the gesture, the act of singing, dancing, or expressing our joy, the most joyous frequencies in any shape or form, well, that alters not just our state of being, but also physical reality, the symbolism of Capricorn. Why are artists, especially singers, so rich and famous and powerful? Because their song is lived, real magic. It hypnotizes us. It creates serotonin. It transmutes our states as if by magic. That is Quaoar. The power of song and music and the sheer strength of joy. Because that altered state of consciousness, well, ultimately it alters our perception. Even when Capricorn, reality looks doomy and gloomy, we can change that, we can shift that, and we already know if that which is within us is different, reality will follow. A next planetoid is also very, very mysterious. She is called Sedna, and she is one of those slowest moving planetoids in our solar system. It takes her 11,400 years to orbit around the sun. She is extremely far away at the very, very edge of the solar system. She is basically the guardian of the Kuiper belt. In mythology, she is the goddess of the sea. And her story has a tragic twist to it because she rebels against males or her partner. She marries a dog. And the creation god, her father, says, I'm gonna throw you into the sea because this is unforgivable. And he does bring her on a boat to the sea to throw her in, but she's so strong that she grips onto the boat and he has to chop her fingers, and from her fingers the marine animals are born. And she became naturally goddess of the sea, especially that which is down, down, down below at the bottom of the ocean. And of course, especially if you have been watching documentaries with marine biologists and what is at the bottom of the ocean, that is almost like an alien world. It has never seen sunlight, yet the life and everything there thrives, and there is bioluminescence. And with that bioluminescence, for example, certain species of octopus, well, they are super intelligent. And Sedna is at 28 degrees of the sign of Taurus, and that is always where she'll stay in our lifetimes at least, and even in the lifetimes of our children. And the sign of Taurus, well, Mother Nature. She is the symbol of the evolution of nature, the upgrading of species. And the fact that she is goddess of the sea and her legend is very, very important because marine biologists have discovered that certain octopus species, especially those which live exactly at the bottom of the ocean and have bioluminescence, well, they can modify their genes. And it's not necessarily Mother Nature who modifies it for them, how species would evolve naturally, but they do it out of their own initiative. Their adaptability is that which scientists have never ever seen before. They can alter themselves, they can transform physically themselves. So what does that tell us? Certain octopus species can give themselves superpowers. The power of the mind. But at the same time, this is Sedna. This is the deep, deep, deep intelligence, the mystery, the quantum information within nature. This is basically Sedna is guarding the very secrets of life. Why is life living? And for us personally, well, what can Sedna do? If we take the symbolism of the octopus, well, sometimes in life we can actually manage to create certain skills, certain talents, certain aptitudes for ourselves that might even go against our very nature. The power of the will, the power of desire, it can transform and alter us. How many examples are out there in the world where terminal cancer patients healed themselves somehow? Is it a miracle or is it mind over matter? That is Sedna. Sometimes anything is possible, truly anything, but that power comes from deep within us. And this is not even as much of a spiritual energy, but this is the mystery of the deepest and most arcane parts of the mind, that which may only surface by sheer coincidence, we might never ever be able to go down so deeply, at least right now, to discover how that works. But it still is there. And many times Sedna is conjunct the demon star Algol, a very malefic energy. When we grip onto dear life and our fingers are chopped off and we sink into the depths of depression, or Sedna in the sign of Taurus, poverty, excruciating extreme poverty, that is when we discover our quantum mind and what it can do. Now, what happens in that abyss is a mystery. Some people may arise and they are altered forever from poverty. They are in an instant rich and famous and powerful. For other people, they disappear, and I don't mean the act of death. They just disappear and enter into another reality, perhaps, other dimension. Whenever we see the deepest expression of the mind, that which is beyond the void, we don't know where we'll go or where that path leads us, but there is quantum power within our earthly physical selves, our neurons included. Now moving on to another very interesting planetoid, which is called Orcas. And I personally find Orcas very, very fascinating. In mythology, in Roman mythology, he was a god of the underworld, a more primordial version of Pluto himself, and naturally the symbolism in astrology is very similar of that of Pluto. And even in physical reality, Orcas is a little bit like a Plutonian planet, because it is just a system like Pluto Chiron. It is tidally locked to his moon named, now this is where I don't know how to pronounce this name, Vant, as in V-A-N-T-H, Vant. And they dance together in the cosmos just like Pluto and Charon does. Orcas is at 13 degrees of the sign of Virgo. He takes 245 years to orbit around the sun. Now, as I said earlier, Orcas is a more primordial Pluto. If Pluto is the underworld, our shadow, everything that has to do with the deepest parts of us, well, Orcas goes beyond. Orcas is the abyss itself. That is which the most primordial part of us. In the sign of Virgo, well, Virgo is all about our physical self, our adaptability. Virgo is the biosphere, the physical living earth, and the power within that. Vant is a guardian demon, so it is infernal, yet it is exactly sometimes, not always of course, but sometimes the most primal part of ourselves. It is the pure expression of the shadow that keeps us alive, that keeps us safe, that guards us. And in the sign of Virgo, well, we can imagine that the purest purity Virgo aspect of the shadow is where that power from within lies, which can shape physical reality, again the sign of Virgo. Mercury's nighttime expression. It has a lot to do with the intelligence of our ancestral heritage. Because basically every ethnic group out there, every tribe, every ethnicity, every culture even, has certain distinctivenesses which are only specific to them and no one else to the planet in any way, shape or form, both physically and anything that has to do with the mental sphere, what they inherited from their ancestors. even including their spirituality, their customs and traditions. Everything has meaning. Everything is an expression of their genetic distinctiveness. In physical reality, Orcas is our mitochondria, and especially the mitochondrial DNA. If you want to know where you come from, well, analyze your mitochondrial DNA. Now, of course, the most elevated and positive expression of Orcas, as I said, that which is beyond the realms of hell. That is the very, very shadow of the divine itself, because if we have shadows, the divine also has a shadow. And that shadow has infinite power. And the most, perhaps, applicable example for this is schizophrenia, Mercury's realm, the mind. And there is also to schizophrenia some kind of physical element, because the brain and the neural patterns, well, they are not usual. Yet schizophrenics have special skills and powers and perceptions that no one else has. They have a very good saying that mystics swim in the same waters as psychopaths drown in. But of course, this is where everyone who embodies their distinctiveness and uniqueness and go against the norm in any way, shape or form, well, that is already an expression of schizophrenia, not to be taken literally, of course, because we perceive something, even if it's just the self, so very differently, and it is real to us. And for some very unusual people, that which is real to them, they can project outside, and it becomes real for other people. And an example within the example, in my youth, I used to do paranormal research work. I was a paranormal investigator. And very many times with poltergeist cases, hauntings, and where the paranormal activity was physical, well, the research, at least my personal research, showed it's no entity, it's no spirit, it's the person. For them, it is so real that their mind makes it real for me and everyone else as well. It was them doing it. It is called the Poltergeist Syndrome, when it is your unconscious physically manifesting. Naturally, more than 80% of what they call possession cases is actually the person, the Orcas within their mind, the Vanth within them, protecting them or rebelling against something in such a strong manner, schizophrenia, where they make it real for everyone, levitation, whatever. It's them. It is actually a part, the most hidden part of the mind. And the soul, unfortunately, many times cannot do anything against that, because that is the abyss from within us. So how do we use it personally? Tap into the most arcane parts of your mind, but how and in which way, well, that is up to you to discover. Mercury in Virgo, after all, research. Now, the most negative expression of this Orcas, it is all those tendencies that we inherit genetically, which lead to strong illnesses. For example, is alcoholism, strong violent tendencies, the urge to kill, or for example certain illnesses that manifest sexually, like pedophilia and the heavy stuff, or for example Virgo, the purity of the divine feminine, when a mother has this incredibly strong urge to kill her newly born baby because of the hormones and everything so certain illnesses of this nature, they are transmittable genetically, even though they may never ever manifest or be active in a person. And criminology and research, scientific research within criminology studied this profoundly, and there are so very many papers and scientific perspectives about this. And the conclusion is that many tendencies are actually transmitted genetically. So, for example, the children of alcoholics will themselves have this weakness, this vulnerability for addictions of any kind. But again, what does this show us? That certain lifestyle or how our psyche influences our bodies, because no one's born with alcoholism, let's say, but when this integrates into our soul, well, our body memorizes it deeply and in such a way where we pass on this psychological information even physically. But there is a good side to this as well. Let's say you have a really, really strong karmic pattern that you just cannot break. There is something blocked in your life, and it was always that way ever since you were born, and nothing worked. You just cannot find a way out, regardless if that's a habit or something physical or an illness or simply karma itself. You cannot succeed at something despite the fact that you are working, talented, studies, etc., etc. Then you have to look back in your family's history. What happened to your grandparents? What trauma? What shock? What big life event has taken there? Orcas is a guiding principle of family constellations. The history of your family may have the answers to why. And when there are answers, there is also solution. So this is how we can use this Orcas in our advantage personally. Now, last but not least, the last dwarf planet that I would like to speak about is named Ixion. And this is one of the most malevolent dwarf planets. It takes Ixion 251 years to orbit. And currently Ixion is at 2 degrees of the sign of Capricorn. Now, Ixion rules everything that has to do with crime, criminality, lawlessness, total immorality. Basically the filth of the filth. It's really, really hardcore. But you see, every single planet and power in astrology has a positive expression and a negative expression. And Ixion is also a rebel, just like Aries, but his legend in mythology is totally different because he was a king, but he was so very immoral that even after Jupiter, the king of the gods, spared his life, well, instead of minding his own business and being grateful, he tried to rape Jupiter's wife. So that was when Jupiter lost it and exiled him into the very depths of the abyss, because that was beyond redemption, beyond pardon. The archetype of the criminal who just cannot stop. Now, in the past years, Ixion was in the sign of Sagittarius, and it brought out the most darkest and negative side of Sagittarius, religious fanaticism, and every single terrorist act and terrorist gesture that was made in the name of religion. The bombings in London. And just recently, when Ixion was in the anoretic degree of Sagittarius, well, it was the Israeli airstrike and everything where there's religion and fanaticism and intolerance for someone's beliefs involved. Now, in the sign of Capricorn, Ixion takes a totally different kind of expression, because this is corruption, political crimes, crimes of sexual nature. This is when our leaders are the biggest criminals out there and we have no idea. But of course there is Pluto in Capricorn as well, revealing everything. Now, what can Ixion do for us personally? Well, its negative side, of course, helps criminals. It kind of helps criminals cover their tracks and commit crimes in a perfect way. But this is definitely not applicable for us. But Ixion is a really, really good cheater because it always gets what it wants through arcane methods, let's say. And in the sign of Capricorn, government, society structure, rules, regulations, the law, management, hierarchy, everything. Sometimes, even if we don't like it at all, we also need that friend in high place. We also need the connection. We also need to evade taxes because we have to take law in our hands, our own hands. Sometimes we do need to tell certain people, clients and customers that I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well and I'll get back to you, and we know that we'll never get back to them. So basically lying, not telling them to their face that I'm sorry, I don't want to work with a person like you. So we say, I'm not feeling very well. Sometimes we need to bribe. For example, in my culture, if you don't give bribe to the doctor, you're dead. So there isn't even any question. Even if you're the most moral person, even if you're immaculate soul-wise, if you don't give the bribe, bye. And of course, Ixion, the legend, sometimes all of us have to seduce our way to get where we want. So exactly the opposite of Makimeki, where we actually say the compliment, the sugar, the honey, the gold glitter, just to get where we want. And we don't mean it whatsoever. Maybe we even have the totally different opinion, the opposite opinion. But Capricorn, real life, society, in an imperfect world, everything has to be imperfect. So sometimes, and it's not an excuse, but sometimes we have no choice. We have to follow the hidden laws and regulations, Capricorn, that is also the thieves' laws, if that makes sense. And of course, another expression of this Ixion, well, the principle of forgiveness. Any spiritual path or morality even psychology, because you have to forgive if someone wronged you to release the pain, the trauma. Well, Ixion might be that situation where there's no forgiveness, there is delete. There is no going back, there is just revenge. Ixion is the kind of situation when, and this is just an example, your sibling did something so unforgivable that you will never ever speak to them ever, and even when they're on their deathbed, then please, my final moment, just forgive me, you say, sorry, no. Ixion is where, well, we need to feed the shadow as well, one way or another, because the shadow is part of nature, and we are not yet in a certain state of being when we can say about ourselves as a species that we're not animals at all. We are still animals, and that animal needs to feed. And finally, I would like to close this presentation by mentioning a not trans-Neptunian object, especially for fellow astrologers and fellow divinators, those who use tarot and any kind of divination technique. There is a small asteroid in astrology called Hecate, goddess of the crossroads, goddess of witchcraft, goddess of divination. She has a very quick orbit, she whizzes through the sign. She's basically just a small little rock in the sky. But if you look at which sign she is in. If you look at her aspects, she can basically help you with divination. Like, let me just give you an example. At the moment of my birth, I had Hecate in the sign of Cancer in my 5th house. So which means that the best divination technique for me personally is a heart-centered one. That which is, yes, intuitive, but it is very, very emotional, if that makes sense. And also Cancer is the sign of the mother and my ancestors, and I inherited this from my great-grandmother. So basically, when I have a very strong dream that can go against astrology aspects, what cards say, what spirits say, or whatever, because that will be the final version. When I dream something important, relevant, and that dream basically shakes me up, I know that that's it. That is the truth. And seeing Hecate where she is, not just in your birth chart, but also in the now, where she transits and what aspects she holds, can give you very strong divination hints and how to use the occult and magic in your own favor and in your own advantage. So this concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. And I hope that you found this useful and that all these planetoids, all the symbolism that they hold, manage to inspire you and make your life a truly more magical place and a more magical state of being. Thank you again. Until next time. Bye for now.